Hello there, YouTubers. Welcome to my What's the Programming Language of 2017 session. It's the new year very soon, and you're all looking forward to learning a new language, I hope. And I wanted to share some of my experiences in the past year about the main languages that you have currently and the languages that you should be focusing on. Now, without further ado, I'd want to jump into some of the languages, but nevertheless to say that if you are a web developer, then HTML, JavaScript and CSS pretty much are base languages. Those are foundation languages, so you'll have to learn that any which ways. But if you are going to be learning beyond web development, this is probably the list that you should look at. So we've got all the major contenders. We've got PHP, we have got Python, we've got Node.JS, and we've got Ruby, C++, and Java. And in this session, I'm going to cover this the challenge through a criteria where I'd be focusing on the following criteria. So I've basically shortlisted 6 criterias, and these criteria are based on a lot of research, and you really have to think for yourself which is more important for you. As a user, as a new noob, I think somebody who's starting out, he should or she should definitely look at community as the #1 criteria. Community should definitely come in as the first criteria for choosing a language, because you will have a lot of clarifications as you progress, and community is a great way to get supported here. And needless to say, all these languages have great communities. So there are languages which are new, and their community might not be as strong as the ones which are not new, but nevertheless, more or less, that's a very important factor. The next one is money. How much are you going to make if you take a particular language? Third one is the availability of jobs. Fourth one is use cases. What kind of areas interests you, and which other languages are focused on a particular area of your interest. Fourth one is freelance versus enterprise. So if you're a freelancer, what languages will help you scale very quickly? And small projects versus large projects. So if you're looking at a small project versus a large project, which kind of covers in the previous point of freelancers versus enterprise. So without further ado, let me just come into the community part of it. I have shortlisted 3 communities. One is PHP, second is Python, third is JS. And this has been picked up from TOB Programming Community Index, which is one of the most famous programming languages criteria documents available right now. So if you look at PHP, clearly PHP is waning. There was a lot of excitement in PHP between the years 2004 to 2012, but it's not been doing that well lately. But it's still one of the most commonly used language in the web, and 80% of the web is run by PHP programs. So it's still a very powerful language, but it's not the future of programming. Then you have Python, which is in the orange chart, and Python has been having a consistently choppy but decent flow, because Python sort of encompasses not just web, but it is a general purpose language. So it covers areas like machine learning, and it covers areas like robotics and so on and so forth. So it sort of gets covered in other areas. And the reigning king today in web is definitely JavaScript, and JavaScript is really expanding its tentacles beyond the client side with Node.js. Now it's covering server side as well. So JavaScript is coming up in a big way. In terms of jobs, I would say that this is a job list from Indeed.com, and as you notice that it's not necessarily the amount of buzz that is there in the language which creates a number of jobs. So for example, you have a number of jobs in Java and JavaScript, because Java is used as an enterprise level language, and most of the large companies use Java. Most of the Android apps are built in Java. So Java is really big when it comes to enterprise. JavaScript, nevertheless to say, is ubiquitous. It is the client-side language, but today, because of Node.js, it's also moved into server-side. JavaScript has a great future, especially with ES6 coming along, and it is pretty much covering a lot of the lacunas which the previous versions of JavaScript had. C#, Microsoft, again, enterprise level languages, so it's gonna stay there. Python, good language to know, general purpose language. C++, again, a decent language to know. PHP, iOS, and Ruby on Rails. So this is kind of the job ranking in terms of availability of jobs. And let's look at the money aspect. So from a compensation point of view, as you would see, that Swift, and this is again from Indeed.com, Swift, which is the new language of Objective-C, developed by Apple and now open sourced. So Swift 3 is the open source version of Swift. It's available and it's commanding a premium, nevertheless to say, because Apple is the developer of this language. Python, Ruby, again, in terms of the kind of work that happens, Ruby is one of the most respected languages for the startup community, so well paid and very highly respected. Python, again, as I was mentioning, is a general purpose language, so there are different kinds of use cases in Python. And PHP, again, is not one of the highest paid languages. It's a good language, so if you need a 9-to-6 job, you need some stable organization, you don't need to be in the bleeding edge of technology, things are gonna go, then PHP is a great language to settle. But if you're going to be in the world of, let's say, Python or Ruby, you're going to be pretty much operating in a very high pressured environment. Ruby on Rails, if you are going to pick up, you would typically expect to be working in a startup with really long working hours and a lot of stuff happening. So really pick your choose in terms of what are your aspirations, but these are the languages that make top dollars in US. In terms of freelance versus enterprise, no prices were guessing that Java reigns the enterprise level platforms, so most of the large companies use Java. C++, thanks C++ and C#, thanks to Microsoft, reign again the enterprise world. And Google uses Python, so I've included Python there as well. PHP, again, Facebook uses PHP, and a lot of large companies which had started their operation sometime in 2000 and now have become large conglomerates are using PHP. But PHP as a language itself has become a little blunt. It was a great language back in 2003, 2004, 2005, but it's become a little blunt, especially because JavaScript is doing most of the jobs that PHP or Python would be able to do in the server side. Freelancers, again, Python is a good language, very quick to learn, easy to learn. That's why it's taught in most of the colleges. It's a very good language. It's a very neat language to learn. Syntax is very clean. If you have to type hello world commands, it's really simple. You just simply have to go and say print brackets hello world. That's about it, right? In comparison to, let's say, a Java, which will take probably 5 or 6 lines of code to write the same thing. Node.js, thanks to JavaScript, now Node.js is coming into the server side. It's the new kid on the block. A lot of hype happening around here. We'll have to see how it sort of pans out, but really doing well. Ruby and PHP are great languages as freelancers as well, because it supports web development in a great way. And if you're starting out a project which is really focused on web development, you could not have a better language than PHP or Ruby to start your development. Use cases. I think this is one of the most important slides, because this tells you what area of interest you're going to pick and which language thus should be taken. These have sort of organically developed into specific areas doesn't mean that you cannot do some work which Python is doing or Node.js is doing. You can always use language interchangeably, but the way it's sort of language is logically developed is that Python has gone into the Internet of Things, data sciences, web crawling, scientific analysis, whereas Node.js has gone more into messaging apps, web development, CPU intensive applications, and real-time dashboards, anywhere where you don't need to be communicating to server all the time. So Node.js is very good at that, because Node.js comes with a feature which is non-blocking, and it is also asynchronous. So both these features are new, and it doesn't require you to go to the server every time. It can take several requests and respond to them at the same time. So it's really good in terms of quick time, real-time applications. PHP web development, it's the king of web development. 80% of web development happens in PHP. And Ruby, which is now sort of waning, it's not doing as much as it used to, but still for quick and very fast development, Ruby has great framework. So the framework Ruby uses, everybody knows that, that's Rails, Ruby on Rails, and it's considered one of the best frameworks to develop any website in a very short span. In terms of deployment versus large projects, again PHP, Ruby are good for quick web development and deployment. Node.js is really good for real-time chat box and streaming kind of deployments. Python and Java are good for large projects with data manipulations. So Node.js gets really complicated when the size of the project becomes big. So there are rumblings about how to structure Node.js so that Node.js is able to fit into a large enterprise kind of a world. But Python is really good in that. Python has really learned the art of becoming a great language for enterprise level programmers like Java. And the final slide is who's the winner. So in my mind, there's not just one winner, there are two winners. And the reason I say this is because both these programming languages are doing really well in their own respective areas. Node.js, when it comes to web, I think Node.js will probably replace all the other server-side programming languages. JavaScript is ubiquitous. JavaScript is client-side. You learn JavaScript when you learn web-based programming. So why learn another language if you're going to be focusing on only web development? That said, Python is really doing well in the area of data sciences, in the area of robotics. And Mark Zuckerberg, if you must have heard, recently developed a chat box, a kind of an AI system for his home called Jarvis. And I was reading Mark's comments on Jarvis, and somebody asked him what should be the programming language that a newbie should learn, and Mark was very promptly replying saying that Python is a safe bet because it's an easy language to get into. It's a very clean language to get into. So if you are getting into areas which involve robotics, data sciences, doing a lot of stuff, if you are into that area, Python. If you're going to stay in the web world, if you think that's your calling, learn Node.js. But I would also say that if you get time, learn both of them, because it's always good to learn one language and then complement that with another language. Having said this, let's just explore some of the companies that Node.js which are using Node.js. And as you say, that there's this plethora of organizations. So you have eBay, Uber, Netflix, you name it, we have it. So and this really is not a list that I would recommend that one should look at, because most of these organizations would choose a language for a very different reason from what you might. So Uber, for example, uses both Node.js and Python. So not necessarily a standard for you to choose a language, but it gives you a general trending, And when it comes to Python, again, Instagram is using Python. Wine is using, Uber is using, Netflix is also using Python. So Python also has a very strong community. But the way Python and Node are moving, it seems like Node is going to capture the predominant market of web, primarily because of its JavaScript language, which everybody learns, and JavaScript is becoming powerful by the day. And Python seems to be, venturing into the bleeding edge technologies of Internet of Things, machine learning, natural programming, language processing, and so on and so forth. So Python is moving towards that direction, and Node is moving into the web directions. Not needless to say, both languages are interchangeable. They can do both things simultaneously, but it seems like they are developing their niche in this particular area. So that's really my recommendation for 2017. Pick one language. Start off with Node.js if you feel that your calling is web development. Pick Python if your calling is robotics, data sciences, and other interesting bleeding edge technologies. So I think with that I would end this presentation. Thank you very much. If you think you have got a different view, you got a parallel view, please do not hesitate to put them in the comments. I'd love to hear your views as well, and let me know how you progress in learning these languages. Thank you very much. Have a great day and Happy New Year to you.